last week we talked about the dominant seventh chord, and this week we're going to talk about the subdominant chord. And once you can play the tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant seventh chord, a whole new world just opens up to you as you're learning how to play these three kind of chords. These are called the primary chords because they're used the most. Hundreds of folk songs, some very popular, simple popular songs, they're all based on that tonic, subdominant, and dominant relationship. So let's take a look at those. So as we started last week, we started out with the 5-finger pattern, and we talked about building a triad on each note of the 5-finger pattern. And yes, my notes are a little too sloppy. So we talked about this one because it's built on the first note of the 5-finger pattern. This is called the number 1 triad, and it also has a scale degree name called the tonic triad. And we mentioned last week how this is called the 2 triad, the 3 triad, this is the 4 triad, and this is number 5. Now each one of these have a scale degree name. This is the tonic, the supertonic, the median. You don't need to know all those. All you need to know is the dominant, and that would be our number 5 that we talked about last week. And this one is called the subdominant. The subdominant, except I don't have room to write that in, so let me get rid of that. The subdominant. Okay, as I mentioned before, the 2 and the 3, those are called secondary triads. We're going to save those for next semester. So again, I am going to get rid of those. And our dominant chord, we talked about that the other day, so we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk today about the subdominant triad. I'm going to reinstate my lines here. Now last week when we talked about the dominant chord, we introduced a new word called inversions. And inversions when we flip the chords over. And so that's the same thing that we're going to do with the subdominant chord. And the reason that we're doing that is that way it's very easy to play. It fits nicely under your hands. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top note and I'm going to put it on the bottom here, and I'm just going to move this note over and this one over. So the only thing that we changed was that bottom note going to, or the top note moving down to the bottom. Remember that we could name these with letter names. Sometimes we call them chord symbols. And so a capital letter indicates a major triad. And so this triad, we would name it, it's built on that F note. But now, since we've rearranged it a little bit, we're going to label it an F/C or an F over C to show us that we're not doing in the basic root position, but we're flipping it over to turn it into an inversion. So again, it's still the 4 chord, but we need to indicate something a little bit more so that we know that it's not in its original form. So we're going to count the intervals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to place a 6 right there. And from the bottom note, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to add that. And so now that is not just the 4 chord, but it is the 6/4, the 4/6/4. And so that 6/4 indicates that it's in second inversion, and we'll be talking a little bit more about what that means. But what you need to know is that getting to this 4 chord now that we've rearranged it, it's much easier to play. So as I showed you last week, let me show you a little chart of how to make that an easy transition. So again, I'm just talking about the left hand. And the left hand, if we use the fingers 5, 3, and 1 for our number 1 triad, or tonic triad, and still this is the left hand, and your thumb is going to go up a whole step. It's going to go up a whole step, and we're going to use your finger 1. Your third finger, do you remember that when you went to the dominant 7th chord in first inversion, it went to your second finger and it went up a half step, and that's exactly what it does when you're moving to the 4 chord, the 4/6/4 chord, I should say. So the 5th finger is nice and easy because it remains the same, and so that the bottom note with finger 5 is going to stay the same, and this is how you get from a 1 chord to a 4/6/4 chord. So let's go and look at how that looks, see how that looks on the keyboard. So I'm going to start in the key of C and play my number 1 triad. And so when we went, as we saw last week, to get to the 5/6/5, we went down a half a step, and your third finger went up a half a step, and that's how we got to the 5/6/5, our dominant 7th chord in first inversion. But today, we're talking about the 4 chord. Your thumb is going to move up a whole step, and your third finger is going to make that same move, going up a half step as it did going to the dominant 7th. So here we go, our tonic to our subdominant chord in second inversion, the 1 chord to the 4/6/4 chord, and back to the 1. Let's try it in a different key. How about G again? And your thumb is going to move up 1, your third finger is going to go to the half step, 1 chord to the 4/6/4, and the 1 chord. Let's try it in F. Here's our F major triad. Remember, your third finger is going to go up a half a step, so that half step will take you to a black key, but your thumb's moving up the whole step. So you have to be very aware of your whole steps and half steps. And let's try it again on a black key. Let's try F sharp. And so your third finger's moving up a half step, and your thumb is going to move up a whole step. Here's the 1 chord and the 4/6/4 chord, and back to the 1 chord. And no matter where you play it on the piano, if you remember those whole steps and half step moves, you'll have it down. So have a good time with your tonics, your subdominant and dominants, and it's just opening up a whole new world to you in your piano playing.